A good function should do one thing and do it well. But then you need logging, timing, or maybe even access control. Suddenly your clean, elegant function is wearing a dozen hats and none of them fit very well. That's where decorators come in. Think of a function like a perfectly baked cake. Decorators are the icing. They wrap the extra behavior around it without changing the recipe. In this video, I'll show you how Python decorators keep your function clean, focused, and more powerful than ever. I'll also explain exactly how decorators work and how you should think about them. Let's get right into it. In this code, I have a simple function that makes the code wait. It just does a sleep. And there's a lot of places in my code where I want to log the time that something took so I can start looking for bottlenecks if I ever get a problem. Now I could put the timer start and stop in the actual function itself, but then that function isn't just doing one thing, it's doing many. This is where decorators come in. And let's think about a decorator as a wrapper, not the singing kind. So if I write a very simple function called timer, and we're going to pass in a function, I'm going to leave that out for now, and then I'm going to take this code here, copy it in here, and then we're going to change this to func. And now you'll see if we run timer and pass in wait, it waits for 0.25 seconds and records the time that it waited. Now that's kind of ugly because I have to call a function into another function and it just looks messy. So how can we fix that? Well, we could return timer as a function. So what we're going to do here is if I create a def wrapper, and we're going to leave the keyword args and quargs in because I actually want to pass in a value. And then what we're going to do is if we go back to the timer function and just return wrapper, what we're now doing is returning wrapper as a function. So when we call this now, if I actually print this, it won't do anything at all other than return a function. And there you go. The function is timer.wrapper. So if we do wait equals timer pass in wait, and then we go down and we call wait, actually let's print wait first. And you'll see it's the function local wrapper. So if we call it normally, you'll see that it's actually now looking like wait, but it's actually calling my timer. But this is kind of ugly as well because we've got a function called wait. We're calling wait, then something else, and then we're waiting. And actually, let me just test that this timer works. So if we set it in 1 second, actually, let's change this time to args1. Was it arg0? And let's try that again. You'll see it waited a whole second that time. But as I said, this is quite cumbersome. So how can we make this less cumbersome? This is where decorators come in. What we can do now is just call our function with @timer. And if we get rid of this line, and then we print it again, it waited a second, and it printed out that it waited a second. Adding a decorator basically did what we did before, which is wait equals timer wait. That's all it does. But it hides all the complexity from your code and wraps the function around the other. And we can now change this, because it's in a function, we can do func dot, I think it's name, took, and if we print that now, wait took 1 second. Now there is still a problem with this code, and that is that if I'm debugging, the stack trace is going to actually not show me wait, it's going to show me what it said before. So if we go back to printing wait, my stack trace is going to show me timer locals wrapper. To help fix that, if we import functool, and then we're just going to do functools.wraps func. It's a decorator itself. Now if we call this, you'll see it's saying function wait, but it's actually the memory location is still pointing out our internal, it's just hidden the fact that we weren't calling wait. What happens if you want to return a value from this function now? Because if we add one, return seconds to wait, so it just echoes back the number of seconds it waited. Now if we turn this into a call and print the response, you'll see that wait took 0.25 seconds, but it printed none. That return value never got back. So how do we fix that? Well, it's simple. We just make this wrapper function return, and let's create retval, a variable, which will store the return value of the func call, and then return retval. And if we do that now, there you go. It echoed back the 0.25 just as we wanted. What happens now if we want to pass parameters to timer to change its behavior? Well, to do that, let's add a func, and then let's add display function. And then in here, we can call display func. Now I'm going to set display func to print so that it works regardless of whether we pass it in or not. And then what we need to do is wrap this as well. So if we do def timer decorator, and then we move all of this inside. And this, if underscore func is none, then we're going to return timer decorator the function. Else, we're going to return the call of the func. And you'll see why in just a little moment. But if we run this right now, we need to change this to func. And this decorator timer also changes to, actually no, let's just make that func. Okay. Wait took 0.25 seconds, so it's working as it did before. But now we should be able to add in a display func. And for here, I'm just going to create disp and make it print. Saves me writing an actual function to do it. And then what we're doing with the decorator here, so if we do that, and then we do display func, and we can pass in, is it disp? Yeah. And if we run that now, you get timer is now missing positional argument func. And that's because when you pass a variable into timer, it doesn't actually pass the function, which causes us a problem. So to fix that, we're going to make function default to none and run it, and it's back to working again. And actually, just to make this a little bit easier, I am actually going to change that to make it obvious that I'm actually calling that and it's not calling print somehow. So if we do print outputting, and obviously this has to take a value. So let's just call it value. And then we're going to print value. And if we run this now, it says outputting, it took 0.25 seconds. So we can see now that it's calling the right function. Now, just to keep with standards, what people tend to do here is they will put an extra comma here and put a star before the keyword argument. And that is a Pythonic thing that tells the next thing that it must be a keyword arg. And therefore, in timer, we would have to pass in display func to make the code work. It wouldn't accept anything else. And that's decorators. All they do is keep your original functions really clean and wrap functionality around them. If you want to do multiple decorator calls on a function, you can just stack them on top of each other and they run in the order in which they're declared. So if we run this with timer, it'll actually run the function twice. Well, that's been Decorators. I hope you found this video useful. In the next video, we'll be talking all about threading. This is a very controversial subject in Python because most people think that threads don't do anything useful. They can still be very, very powerful for making your code run much more quickly if they're used in the right circumstances. But we'll get into that in that video, top left right now. And with that, thank you for watching, and I'll catch you on the next one.